All right, it's 5 o'clock. Let's call the meeting to order. Start with the pledge.
I'll make a motion to approve the January 13th regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? I actually have an item. My last name's misspelled throughout the minutes. Can we get that amended to spell my name correctly?
Zachary?
No, the Terrell.
T-Y?
Yeah. Anything else from anyone? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the select board will meet on the following dates. Thursday, February 6th, we have the second public budget hearing at 5:15. That is a Thursday. I will not be here in person, but I will be available remotely on Zoom. Everybody else going to be here in person?
I cannot be.
Okay, so we'll have 3 in person and me remote. That'll be good. Monday, February 10th, regular meeting beginning at 5 p.m. Monday, February 24th, also a regular meeting beginning at 5 p.m. Any citizens wishing to be listed on the select board's agenda should notify the town hall before noon, the Thursday before the scheduled meeting. And all meetings are held right here upstairs in town hall and by Zoom, and that Zoom information can be found on the town's website at plymouthnh.gov. With that, Scott, let's get a town manager's report.
Sure, thank you. In my report this week, as Zach just mentioned, the 25-26 budget, the second public budget hearing is on February 6th. Our goal, as we will discuss tonight, is to have continued budgeting conservatively for 25-26. Town elections available vacancies. The town clerk is hereby given notice to the residents of Plymouth, New Hampshire, that the town has several seats on town boards that are up for election on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. The filing period begins on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025, and runs through this Friday, January 31st, 2025 at 5 p.m. Candidates must file a declaration of candidacy with the office of the town clerk to be included on the ballot on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. To be qualified for an office, candidates must have and maintain a domicile in the town and be registered to vote. The positions that are open there is 2 selectman positions for 3-year terms, 1 moderator for 2-year term, 1 town clerk, 3-year term, 1 tax collector, 3-year term, 1 supervisor of the checklist, 6-year term, 1 trustee of the trust fund, 3-year term, 1 trustee of the trust fund, 2-year term, 1 library trustee for a 3-year term, and 1 cemetery trustee for a 3-year term. Update on the deputy fire chief. Chief Pierce conducted interviews for the new deputy fire chief on Tuesday, January 15th. I am pleased to announce that Dan Doucette from Thornton, New Hampshire has been hired. Dan has spent the last 18 years in the fire and EMS service, most recently with Laconia Fire Department. Dan will be starting on February 18th, and we will hope to have Dan at the select board meeting on February 24th for introductions. Plymouth Firemen's Association with regards to Engine 1. I received an email from the Plymouth Fire Association about the old Engine 1. Their goal is to refurbish Engine 1, which they understand is the property of the town of Plymouth. They wanted to reach out to the select board first to inform you of their intentions and to seek your support before they proceed. There are various levels of refurbishment that they can pursue, and the first step will be gathering information to determine what they believe will be the best option. They are also aware that this project may be costly, but their hope, is to fundraise to cover the entire associated with the refurbishment. And they're just looking for the board to give your approval and moving forward with studying the refurbishment and starting fundraising efforts through the Plymouth Firemen's Association for this process.
Will they be engaging with, mechanics, licensed mechanics and whatnot, or do they plan on?
There's
anything?
agencies that do this type of
Gotcha.
refurbishment on antique fire apparatus, which this is an antique. So I think they're reaching out to various vendors that provide that type of service.
Very cool. Nice.
Plymouth State University update. I met with Jess Dutal on Tuesday, January 21st. We discussed the upcoming semester. I attended the campus community mental health work group on Friday, January 10th. We discussed a number of topics in collaboration with Katie, Whole Village, PSU, Behavioral Health Representation, and the Community Impact Department. The University Community Impact Department will be hosting a Red Cross blood drive on February 17th from 12 to 4 p.m. at the Hub. The Plymouth community is welcome. Solar array. So we received our first credit report from New Hampshire Electric Co-op. And for the first month, we will receive a credit of $1,217.36. Keeping in mind that this is paid to the town once a year in the month of March.
Scott, do you know what our expectation was?
Our expectation is between $13,000 and $15,000.
No, I mean,
I'm sorry.
but when we went into the project, do you know what our expectation was
I
for
don't,
how much we would
Zach.
generate?
I
Because
don't.
now I know, like, it's 13 to 15,000 based on what the machine's actually doing. But
The number that I remember was between the renewable energy credits as well as the credit from the co-op was around $23,000 to $25,000 a year that we would
Okay.
receive for both of those, and then those monies would be applied towards the loan of that project.
And the goal being to get the loan paid off as soon as possible, and then that just becomes straight revenue.
Exactly.
So the 1,200, I understand, it's for every billing cycle or just once a year?
No, the $1,200 was for the first billing cycle for
Okay.
the month of December. We will get that credit every month.
So every 12, okay. So that's where you come up with the 13 to 15?
Correct.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Correct. IT conversion, our IT conversion from CCS to Connection Susur will take place on February 1st. We have been working diligently with department heads and Connection Susur for this conversion. All town departments, with the exception of Parks and Recreation, will make the transition as they are still with the Plymouth School IT system. The estimated savings and cost per year is about $29,000 amongst all departments.
Scott, just to confirm, that 29,000 is estimated but not in the current budget that we're going to review tonight?
That $29,000 is in the current budget, and we left it in the current budget based on the assessment that Susur will do starting this Friday if new equipment needs to be purchased by each individual department to make sure we are in compliance.
So those savings will be realized, we'll figure out what they're actually realized in this next budget, and then the following year, things will be reduced as a
Correct.
result.
Correct. The important dates, Zach covered that earlier. Employment opportunities, we still have an opening for a full-time police officer. We have a full-time highway worker mechanic position and a firefighter EMT position available as of today. And that concludes my report.
Foreman position filled.
What's that?
Was the foreman position filled?
No, we're holding off on that right now, based on Steve's recommendation.
Do you need any sort of vote in support of the fire engine restoration?
I think it would be good, so I can report back to them with a vote.
Okay, I'll make a motion to support the initiative to restore the fire engine as described.
I'll
Second.
second.
Oh, you got it.
Someone else can figure out who got that second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. All right, that gets us not quite to 5:15. Let's,
You want to do quickly, Zach, the appointment piece?
it'll take 6 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've received 2 requests for planning board members to be reappointed to the planning board, Sue Woods, who is currently a permanent member on the planning board, and Mike Ahern, who is currently a permanent member on the planning board. The question is, seeing these are the two first individuals that we've had that have been full-time seated members of the planning board, is are we going to continue to follow the protocol of having the planning board submit a letter to the Board of Selectmen recommending each one of these individuals to continue on in their seat as a full-time planning board member?
As opposed to,
Just taking their
Signing,
letters for reappointment and doing the reappointments without planning board input.
Seems to me like planning board input makes sense.
I like that.
They're the ones working with those board members, and they'll know if they're present and contributing, so I think that makes sense. Let's get the planning board to send recommendations to us, however they choose to generate
Yep.
those recommendations, and then we can vote on them.
I agree.
And that'll be for any board, not just the planning board, is that correct?
I think that makes sense
Yeah.
for any board, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for reappointments.
And we did that with the Recreation Commission at the last meeting when they came in with those recommendations. So I think it's just following the protocol.
Yeah, we
and
sort of
doing our due
established it with that other committee, and would just make that kind of our standard operating procedure.
So Joseph, if you want to take that back to the planning board at your next week's meeting. Thank you.
As a representative from the planning board, does that make sense, Joseph? That seems fair?
That's fine, I mean, the appointment procedure is up to the select board, but the planning board has been reviewing prospective new appointees and, weighing in, so it's certainly a procedure that the board has done, so I think it's, new folks who asked to get on the board, it wouldn't be a change for the board, as I see it anyway.
Great. It was less than 6 minutes.
I've got a couple items. If
Yeah, you want to let's hit the signature file.
We have health officer and deputy health officer nominations are Kevin Pierce and our new deputy Daniel Doucette. These are forms that go to the state for their reappointment. Well, changing positions now that Tom is gone. The next item is a deputy forest fire warden appointment. And that again will go to Dan Doucette. And I have an application here for an applicant, a homeowner in town, who is to receive a blind exemption and meets all the qualifications.
Good luck finding a spot, Mary Ann.
right next to yours.
It's good to constrain her.
Keep her in her box.
I'm feeling the love.
You do have a hand raised in the chat, Zach.
There's a hand raised.
Take
in
a
the
look
chat.
at it as soon as I hand this piece of paper to Mary Ann. Hand raised in the chat. What's going on in the chat?
Is there a place?
Oh, whoever, Dan Marion wasn't able to hear Joseph. Joseph just said that it matched with the procedures they've been using for reviewing new appointees, and so it felt like a reasonable addition to the work that they're already doing around planning board membership.
Thanks, sir.
Was that it? They all come through? All right. I'm going to pretend it's 5:15, and we will open a hearing on the budget. I've got a slide deck that sort of summarizes. Sometimes reading the whole spreadsheet can be a little bit intimidating. So I'm going to go through that. It's going to take a little bit just to get through that. Certainly, if anyone in the audience has questions while we're going through that, raise your hand. I'm happy to recognize anybody who's here we've got a good attendance tonight, but not an overwhelming attendance. So there's no reason to hold your questions to the end. But obviously, if you have questions, approaching the microphone's a whole lot better. Make sure we capture it for YouTube or whatever. And then at the end, feel free to stand up too. We'll give everybody time at the end. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into talk about the budget. First off, it's always good to just, what have we done to get here? There was a series of meetings between department and Scott and finance to go through department head recommendations and kind of review what the needs were and skinny that down quite a bit right out of the gate. Then Capital Improvement Plan Committee met a few times in October. The Budget Committee met throughout October and November. And finally, the Select Board met with all of the departments over the course of December to go through and come up with the proposed budget we're going to see tonight. And then we get to tonight. There's the first budget hearing. And then as we've already talked about, February 6th will be the second budget hearing. But then the most important 2 days being town election day and the town meeting. So we'll have an opportunity to talk more about all of these items at those places, but obviously sooner is better. And as always, a big shout out, thank you to the Budget Committee and the Capital Improvement Planning Committees who do a bunch of work to make all this happen, not to mention department heads and everybody. It's a process. All right, so a few notes for contextualizing these big numbers. We try to put it in terms of tax rate impact. Those are estimated. It's based on current valuation. Things change. They're not precise. They're presented as precise numbers, but the reality is they're estimated based on current valuation. And actually, the estimation is based on a different 747 is what everything in here is estimated on, not 800. Also, these are gross appropriations. Our revenues fluctuate based on everything, the money and grants that we get, how much we're able to collect from taxes, changes in valuation in the town. So again, everything it's close, right? And then in recent years, we've ended the cycle or the year with a budget surplus. I think this is maybe the third year in a row now we haven't had to freeze our budget as we came up to the end of the year or the last quarter of the year, which is the way things should be, right? We should be budgeting, then kind of conservatively spending that money over the course of the year, and hopefully we get to the end and we haven't overspent and we're not, taking measures. So that's been great work by Scott, the department heads, and to manage the budget in that way. And the other good news is when we get to that point, we also have the opportunity to use some of that funding at the end of the cycle to potentially reduce the tax rate more. So again, everything that's here it's close, but it's, the actual appropriations are exact, but the impacts on things like tax rate are approximated. First, let's review where we're at with the tax rate. The overall tax rate for the town of Plymouth is made up not just of the piece we're going to talk about this evening, but a few different components. You've got the town component, which for 2024 is $10.93. And then you've got the other four components, which is the school local, school state, county, and I actually have one line item duplicated in that table. But it all adds up to $25.12. That's the tax rate in the town of Plymouth. And we're only going to be talking about that first line. If you want to have impacts on the other lines, attend school board meetings or county planning meetings. I have no idea where the county rate is set or budget is determined, but
That's it.
in the scheme of things, it's not that big.
We have a commissioner.
We have a commissioner in the audience. That's true. We do, don't we? We have Commissioner Hedberg. So you can talk to her about the county's rate and us about the town's rate.
Jack, if I can just do a little overview on the tax rate.
Yeah, please.
From where we've been. So over the past 3 years, in 2022, the town portion of the tax rate was $13.28. 2023, $11.09. 2024, $10.93. So you can see we've worked hard to decrease the town portion of the tax rate by $2.35 over that 3-year period. And like I said in my opening remarks in my town manager's report, we worked very diligently this year. And when Zach gets through the presentation, you'll see, again, we will be able to stabilize that rate. And even if you look back to 2020, the tax rate was $11.40. So we've made some progression over the course of at least the last 3 years of stabilizing the town portion of the tax rate by really looking at the budgets and starting budgets with zero balance budgeting to make sure that we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's.
Yes.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, so quick high-level summary. The overall increase in the budget, and it is an increase, is going to be 9 cents approximate is what we're going to be talking about tonight. The overall gross appropriation is more than that. It's going to be an increase of $794,021. But the increased revenues that we have offset most of that increase so that the actual effect ends up being about 9 cents. Some of the big things that impact some of those increases, we do have new union contracts for fire, ambulance, police dispatch that all were negotiated this year and will be on the warrant. We also have a proposed new firefighter EMT, which is this is the year 3 of a 3-year process to increase our staffing in the fire department to get up to adequate levels for the amount of call volume we have. 3 years ago, we started with a proposal to add 3 firefighters in 1 year, and we said, let's do that a little more progressively, so we've been adding 1 a year. Again, that will be on the warrant, so there is an opportunity to say no to that, but it is something we're encouraging. And then the final is just capital for roads and equipment. You know, there's a lot of capital projects that are in here. Not a disproportionate amount because we have a capital improvement plan that tries to keep that steady. But that's the big categories. We're going to go through everything in detail, but those are kind of the highlights. Stepping back for 1 second, calculating the tax rate comes from a few different components. First, we have operating budget appropriations. Those are things like the various departments and their expenses and staff and those kinds of things. We have special warrant articles. Again, everybody gets a chance to vote on those individually. And then we have some individual warrant articles for other things. Again, you get a chance to vote on those. Everything we're going to talk about here is going to assume every single warrant article that is on the docket passes. So we have to assume that everything we're going to put forward is going to pass when we put together the budget and the impact. So if that's the case, total gross appropriations for the town will be $13.5 million. We're looking at some anticipated revenues and credits. There is more detail in the packet if you have one on the last page that kind of breaks that out a little bit. But it's about $5.3 million of revenues and credits. That means the amount we have to raise from taxes, about $8.2 million. And then it's a little bit of division with the town's valuation. And that gets us to an estimated tax rate of about $11.02. Again, Scott said current tax rate's $10.93, $11.02. There's where the 9 cents comes in.
And I think one thing that's important is that when we get to that point and we're setting the tax rate next year, my recommendation to the board will be to use unassigned fund balance to offset that increase, or maybe lower the tax rate a little bit lower, but that all depends on the revenues that come in. And when we get to that point in time, we do have $1.8 million in unassigned fund balance that we can use for offsetting the tax rate, as well as any emergency situations that occur within the town over the year.
Exactly. All right, going one level closer on that 13 million. Here's each of the major line items. I'm not going to go over these on this slide because we're going to go through each of these on their own slides. But this is a good, for people who are watching at home or on YouTube, this is a good slide to pause and understand, what you're looking at here and where the increases and things are coming from and reference back to it. But I'm gonna pop forward and go through each of these. So general government, overall, the big movers here are, well, first of all, overall general government's going up 3.6%. That's about $110,000. The big categories that lead to that increase is 4% raises for the staff. There's quite a few staff in here. If you have been paying attention since last year, we moved all the personnel administration into this category. So all the health and dental for everybody who works for the town is now in general government. And so this encapsulates the increases of health and dental for all employees across all of the town of Plymouth. The good news is that our health insurance portion only went up 2.1%, which, given everything and how bad that can be in previous years, some really good work from administration to keep that cost increase under control. Some big other line items in here. We're moving from a 5-year property appraisal to a 2-year property appraisal. Our hope there to cause less fluctuation in the tax rate, less impact on folks when there's big changes to the real estate market. As a result, this is one of those years where we're doing property appraisals, and so you'll see that cost in here. On land use, that's the land use line? No, that's the property appraisal line, sorry. And then land use enforcement, we're moving to a full-time building inspector position, and so that's an increase that's here. We are looking at some opportunities around revenues to offset that increased cost on the building inspector. Remember, we're looking at gross appropriations, not the associated revenues, so that may end up having less actual impact on the budget than it appears here. Questions or comments about general government before I pop forward? All right, police. Really only two big things here, and you can see that in the 0.8% increase for the police department, which is a very small number in one of our largest budgets. So 4% raises for the police under a new union contract, a 3-year contract that was negotiated this year. And that's pretty much it. That's the whole story on police. Two little footnotes here that we often get asked about, and so figured we'd get in front of. One, the school pays 75% of the resource officer that's in this budget, so just good to know that one of those positions is funded from elsewhere. And the other is that parking is now generating more revenue than it costs us. So there was a long period of time where that parking line item was sort of a loss leader for us, but that's no longer the case. We actually generate positive revenue that fully offsets and then some that parking line.
Do you still have a hand raised, or is that still Dan Marion?
That's a good question. Nope, I don't see. It must still be Dan Marion. All right, fire and ambulance. So this is a 7.8% increase. But if you look at the table, you can see that the majority of that increase is coming from the new proposed fire EMS member. So other than that, you've got the 4% raises. Similar to police, we have a new union contract with the fire and EMS. They are now on a separate union contract and operating with a separate union. That's why the times are different. We'll end up offset, so we're negotiating. We aren't negotiating both fire and EMS on the same year. They'll be offset. And then I just wanted to mention that, again, just sort of an update from last year. We rearranged our budget line items to make it clearer about the EMS costs and changed the way our ambulance billing contract worked, which has been extraordinarily successful. I think, Scott, did you want to say a little bit more about how successful we've been with our new ambulance contract?
Sure. So we contract with 4 communities. We contract with Ashland, Holderness, a portion of Bridgewater, and the town of Rumney. So in the past, we use a billing agency to bill the private insurance carriers as well as the commercial market, Medicare and Medicom. And through the process and over the years, we're collecting 38 to 40% of what we bill. Well, as everybody understands, a business can't be successful on 38 to 40% of revenue coming in on 100% of the cost. So last year, we've moved to a different billing philosophy. And what we do now is we have an average of number of calls to each one of those communities. And we know through fire department administration, Chief Pierce and Jen, his administrative assistant, that the calls going into 25, 26 is going to be over $1,300 per call. And that's taking into consideration all of the expenses, capital Ann's time from a finance perspective, my time of working with the communities is built into that $1,373 per call. So what we do is we invoice each town that amount for each call we go on, and they pay on a quarterly basis. So in theory, at the end of the year, we will be 100% reimbursed for the cost associated with running an ambulance service. Now, the monies that we receive from insurance companies, the town has an option of getting a check back, or they can apply it towards their next year's ambulance cost. For example, we have one town that we've monitored very closely over the last year, and in the first quarter, their invoice was $23,000 for the amount of calls that we went on. And collection from insurance companies was $1,628. So you can see the loss that Plymouth was taking over the course, just over that first quarter, but at the end of the quarter, it's about 38% of what we're due in running that service for them. So we've made some strides in that, and we will be 100% reimbursed for the cost associated with running an ambulance to those towns.
So great work from Scott and finance and chief as well to really get us to the point where we're not funding other communities' ambulance service. So
I think just on
Really
another
great
note,
about that.
with the police department, with dispatch, is working with Alex and Nate this year, is that we have added capital expense into the invoices that we're sending the 9 communities that we dispatch for, which totals about $25,000 this year. And those funds will be put aside to be used for upgrading or updating equipment in the dispatch center, computers, and all of those things. So now we're recouping some funds back so that the town of Plymouth isn't paying for those capital expenses as we're moving forward proportionately.
yeah, it's great. Good work. So we think about where did those additional revenues come from? It's these sorts of things that increase our revenues. All right, on to highway. This is actually a reduction in cost in the highway department, 4% raises overall, but there were extensive efficiencies found through the process that Scott was using this year, where we did, 0 line item budget and just built it up from the bottom. So great news on highway. Recycling and sanitation, similarly, this is a very, very, very small change in, it's mostly just raises, and most of that is offset by some savings. So we're less than $2,000 of cost change for recycling and sanitation. Parks and Recreation, overall here, it's a 1.4% increase, less than $10,000. The recreation budget in particular has done just a fantastic job managing that budget and keeping their costs really under control, frankly, while extending services and offering more services to the community. So really amazing work from the recreation portion. Parks is up a little bit, but again, it's right in that 4% range, kind of what we would expect. Patriotic purposes is down. The one that's up is we did add some funding for Plymouth's beautification committee that's doing some of the the planting around the signs and I guess around the welcome sign and now and also in the roundabouts. So we added a little bit of money there just to help that overall process. The other item is just sort of the footnote that the school pays 72% of the parks budget. Schools. It's not just the one, the 2. Did you have another comment, Scott?
Nope, that was it.
Oh, okay, perfect. On to library. Again, an extraordinarily small change here. Effectively 0%. When you round it, it's $1,400 increase. There were 4% raises in the library as well, but because of the overall efficiencies found in the budget, the impact is far less than the staff increases. Next up is nonprofits. The nonprofit committee, which is sort of a subcommittee of the budget committee, went through and did a careful review of all the applications from all the nonprofits, and made again a real strong focus on children and the elderly with what we're funding and how we're going about choosing our funding sources. And they ended up cutting quite a bit out of the nonprofit budget this year. And so you're seeing an overall 36% reduction in money we're giving to nonprofits. And miscellaneous. This is sort of a grab bag of the smallest departments around. The only real increase of note here is in welfare vendor payments and administrative welfare. There's just been an increase in needs for services in our community, and so our part-time welfare person is working more hours to facilitate that, and the amount that we're spending needs to go up a little bit just to handle the needs in our community. The overall scheme of things, pretty small. Within those smaller budgets, the numbers look a little bit bigger. Next, we're going to switch into capital improvement. And so this kind of encapsulates 4 areas. Debt service, that's anywhere where we've taken out loans to do projects and now we have to pay them back. It includes any capital land or capital building projects or any machinery that we may be purchasing or leasing. We do have an overall capital improvement plan and a committee that manages that. We're maintaining a good 6-year plan that allows us to keep our capital machinery, capital equipment from falling out of repair and getting replaced in a timely manner, and starting to improve our roads, all of these sorts of things. That plan seems to be working well. I think this is year 3 of the capital improvement plan, I think.
Correct.
Yeah, and it on lots of fronts, it's made the budgeting process easier, and it has led to a lot more consistency. You'll see that due to some projects that we're just not doing this year, right? We don't have the solar array, and we don't have some of these sorts of things. The overall amount of capital improvement projects is down from last year, somewhat significantly. The other one was Main Street. We don't have that big one. But anyway, let's look at debt service. It's down a little bit. Mostly that's due to the solar array costing a little bit less than we had anticipated, which is great. But we currently have 5 open bonds that we're working through. Slightly down year over year. Capital land and improvements, a bunch of big projects here. We've got the library. We're doing a roof drainage project on that to kind of protect the overall building from some of the water that's coming off the roof, and so that it doesn't end up running back into the building. Got landfill monitoring, which is a perennial land improvement. Our big road project, or one of our 2 big road projects for the coming year, is Emerson, which is long overdue, but that one is getting some attention. We got to paint Town Hall, so we're going to paint the building. We've got to reface and resurface the bricks. Got some crushed gravel that the highway department needs for various road repairs. The Town Hall main repairs, air heat, that one, is that the...
What we've completed so far is the air conditioning part of the HVAC. Next year and the year after, we'll complete the heating system for that.
Perfect. So aircon's done. Next up, heating. Another line item related to revaluation of property, which is different. The other one is the full town reval, and this is the rolling one. Am I right about that?
The other one is actually the pickups and that.
Oh, the other one is the
annual,
rolling
yes.
one, and this is the big one. Right. Okay. Thank you. The Highland Street project, which we will have significant grant funding around as well, but this is specifically related to the intersection area around Old Ward Bridge Road, Reservoir Road, and then all the way down to Broadway. So that kind of area of Highland Street. And there is 80/20 funding with the state on that. The airport needs a new well, and PBTV, which most of you watching this are enjoying through PBTV, needs some new cameras and equipment. All right, those are the overall capital land improvements. Any commentary on that before I jump forward? Not seeing any. And then capital machinery, vehicles and equipment. There's a lot on this list this year. We've got quite a few things going on. Actually, Scott, do you want to talk about some of these? I feel like you know them much better than I do.
Sure. So with regards to the fire department, as most people are aware, we do have a new fire engine sitting in the station today, but that, of course, is a payment, a lease payment that we have to make. But we also, the select board authorized a new 2,500-gallon tanker that will replace a 1998 tanker that's sitting there now. In accordance with the National Fire Protection Association, a first-line piece of apparatus shouldn't be any older than 20 years old. So we have far outlived that 2,500-gallon tanker that's sitting in the firehouse. So we were able to successfully negotiate a lease with Franklin Savings Bank for the purchase of that piece of apparatus, keeping in mind that it takes 36-plus months from the date of order to the date that piece of apparatus is received. So we needed to do something sooner than later. And that piece of apparatus is costing us anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 a year to maintain, based on the age of the equipment and things just breaking down on that. So we have two payments for two separate fire trucks. We have a new ambulance that will replace a 2020 ambulance that has been ordered. Again, that's a 24 to 30-month lead time before that new ambulance comes in. And we're replacing a 2016 fire chief's vehicle that needs to be replaced based on what's being done. We have a new patrol vehicle for the police department that's included in this, as well as dispatch consoles and desks. That's the $25,000 that I talked about. That is additional invoicing to the communities. Tasers, a yearly payment for the tasers that the police officers use, and a radio repeater on Hemp Hill in Bristol is needed to enhance our communications with Alexandria and some of the outlying areas that we have. We continue to remove the glass from the recycling center. That should be completed in another 4 years, so we have $25,000 in the CIP for that purpose. And then with regards to Pemmy Baker TV, a new channel broadcaster server, which is well overdue, is included. Roof drainage system for the library is included in this CIP, as well as a new six-wheel dump truck for the Public Works Department, which Steve is pounding his head against the wall, which it should have already been here today, but hopefully will be here over the next 30 to 60 days. Again, trying to get equipment takes 20 to 30 months to get even a dump truck nowadays. So again, that's a lease with Franklin Savings Bank. And just to note that each one of these leases, we bill in a non-appropriation clause. So in the event that something was voted down at town meeting, we would be able to hand the truck back, whichever piece of apparatus or vehicle it is, without penalty, because we do include a non-appropriation clause in the leases that we have. Like Zach mentioned, the crushed gravel, some tree work, the well replacement at the cemetery, and then probably most of all is the work that needs to be done at Town Hall, because we've really not done our due diligence in making sure we're keeping up with things at Town Hall. And the things that Zach mentioned was the HVAC system, interior, exterior painting, replacing the exterior building bricks. If you were to look at the side towards the church, You'll notice there's some bricks that are bulging out and ready to fall out of place, as well as we've put money in here for restoration of the cannon that sits on the front lawn of Town Hall. We've got some software in here for the facility management program, the reevaluation as mentioned, and then for the Conservation Commission, there's money to do a natural resources inventory. That's about $14,000. It is a warrant article that will be on the warrant.
Scott, on that one, it's actually currently 23,000, and then we wanted to discuss potentially amending that.
Amending that warrant article down to $14,000 from $23,000.
Yeah, so it's currently 23,000. That's a 2-year or a 2-part project, and the Conservation Commission has the funding in their budget or in their fund to pay for part 2. So we can amend that 23,000 down to 14.
14.
Someone wants to make a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to make the amendment of that warrant article down to 14,000.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
So that last item you see here, that's 23, will actually be 14.
And the two road rebuilding projects, which is Highland Street, which Zach mentioned, and Emerson Street, we were fortunate enough that we came in under budget on the downtown drainage project, as well as finished ahead of time. So we had roughly $500,000 left for that project. What we'll do to assure that there's no impact on the tax rate is use that money to fund the Highland Street project, the 20% that the town of Plymouth is responsible for, and we'll use it towards the Emerson Street $295,000 to assure there's no impact on the tax rate for these two projects, using money that was already appropriated for road construction purposes.
Great. Thank you. And then the only other thing that's left, I think, is the fire and police building needs assessment, which is another $25,000 to assess our needs around that building. We talked about, Scott talked about those, the transfers to capital reserve funds. And that takes us back to summary by area, which I'll leave up if anybody has any questions, because it's a good reference. But we can obviously jump back to anything if folks have other questions or thoughts. Yes, please. Yeah, that way we can capture your voice.
Katie Hedberg, Emerson Street. My question is, the new federal government has put some freezes on some grants that I know are affecting various things. And my question was, does the town have anything that's being affected, and will that affect this budget, or how will we deal with that? Thank you.
The one, Katie, the one thing that it does affect is we did submit for a grant for electric vehicle chargers, and the current administration has frozen any funds that will be used for electric vehicles and chargers. So not that we have any money in this budget for that, but we had applied for that grant, and it is frozen right now, so we'll wait to see what happens over the course of 1 to 4 years.
As well, we are looking at potentially a waiting game for the credit for the solar array. Those monies, $201,000 has been frozen at this time, so we're waiting. Hopefully that will come through because it was already promised, but we'll see.
Okay.
So.
Other questions? Anybody online?
I have one hand up. Is that still Dan?
No questions from me.
All right, I guess.
Yeah, it's still,
That answers
it's
that.
still him, yep. All right, well, if there are anything else from the board before all right, I'll close the public hearing. And we will have a second hearing on this budget in February. Given the minimal discussion tonight, though,
So we were looking to have the second meeting or something on February 6th.
They made the
I
request.
can't make it. I said I could, but I can't.
I have it on my schedule, so I should be okay.
Both parts of the
Two
project.
My-
people.
yeah, I don't know about my
I-
remote.
I will,
MRI needs to be done and then.
Endeavor to make it.
That's
it's 5:15,
because
classes in
I think
DNA.
they're trying
Did your
to
class get over?
do as much themselves.
Technically after that, but I have flexibility.
Keep the cost down.
Okay.
So I'll do my level-headed best to be here
they
at
have
5.
so it was a total of 22
How much notice do we have to give if we need to reschedule?
that they're willing to use towards the
Well,
second
24 hours, but
Okay.
of this project. And the town will follow.
People would be annoyed.
Yeah, I'll bend.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be online, and I
So they're gonna start it.
think some of the remote procedures are still somewhat
And I have
valid.
both contracts.
we kind of, yeah.
And?
We kind of ignored
three
something,
vehicles,
but
Kevin?
we didn't pass the bill yet. Allow for, you need a quorum at the single spot.
I'll be here.
These forms for health officer and does Kevin want
I'll put
those?
it in the box tomorrow. I don't want him to, I don't want it to get lost between here and
Okay.
there. Okay.
We'll make it happen.
Rather than checking my box,
We'll make it happen.
probably should check it, huh?
All right.
Okay.
Sounds like our audience has quieted down.
Since you came, Scott.
We have new old business.
New old business. We've got
Old business.
a letter from Joyce Weston. Asked us if we would sign this letter of support. Effectively asking the state to maybe do their fair share when it comes to funding education in this state, which is an embarrassment, frankly. But how do we feel about signing this letter?
I'm in favor.
Absolutely.
I already signed it online.
Oh, you did. We were gonna do it all at
Oh, I
once.
didn't know you could
Well,
do
we
that.
can sign it tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we could all just sign it online if
Right.
that's what
It's
we
up
want
to
to do.
you. As long as we have some documentation, that's fine.
You be able to do that, or you'd rather?
We can
Whatever
sign
you
this
wanna
one.
do. I'll sign it tonight.
Well, let's
fine.
sign both.
Yeah.
Sign this
Okay.
physical one, and then anybody who wants to sign it online, we'll do it there too.
The one I forget.
This is the
Chase
original.
it down.
Okay.
What's this one I've got in my folder? Is that a second original?
This is Ann says this is the original.
All right.
I didn't realize you had
I
one.
trust
Sorry.
Ann.
Well, you sure you don't want to do that one? It's up to you. This is almost original.
I mean, when people
The one I have has the sign it
know,
sticker on
yeah.
it. It feels more official.
If you want to take the stickers off, put it on.
Well, I'm going to actually.
the buck should stop, should be up the hill or wherever else.
Any other discussion about that topic?
Seemed to be
Pretty
good.
straightforward. I was glad she reached out to us. We did everything in the signature file. That takes us to committee reports.
Okay. This goes to Ann.
Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, Scott.
Yes, sir. I went to the meeting on January 14th. The major part of the discussion was their budget, their warrant, and their rate hearings. They have 7 warrant articles that will be on their warrant this year that total $32 million. It ranges from a new water tank on Highland Street Reservoir Road. It also is well replacement at Foster Street. And I'll go the largest ones. The 3 largest ones is the tank on Reservoir Road for $7 million. And then water and sludge upgrades for $7 million. And pump station upgrade at the plant for $7 million. But the 7 warrant articles total $32 million. And they are still searching for state and federal funding opportunities as well of any grants that might be available. What this does in accordance to their budget and the warrant articles is that ratepayers should expect to see a 5 to 7% increase over each year for the next 3 years. They have updated the rate calculator on the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer website, which if you go in today, I checked it before we came into the meeting, it will update with the new rates based on their proposed budget and items that they are including in the warrant articles. Other points of interest is they have applied for a sustainability grant of $30,000 with a $15,000 match to engineer low-pressure zones. They've $25,000 in water storage protection grant for Foster Street, which they've applied for. They're working with Plymouth Area Renewable Energy on review of the solar panels that they have at all of their facilities. And then the last thing is they have completed their audit for 2023, and it was signed off by Plotzik and Sanderson. And that really concluded their meeting. They do have the next meeting coming up in February, but their annual meeting will take place on March 13th at 6 p.m. at their village district office.
Is that 32 million that's going to be on their warrant, is that a single warrant article, or are they itemizing out those 30?
Seven different warrant
Se-
articles.
Seven different
Yes.
articles.
Yeah. And the meeting was about 40 minutes long.
That could have been worse. Planning board.
Okay, we had a hearing on, a meeting agenda on January 16th. And the first item on our agenda was an extension request compliance hearing of Mountain Village Charter School. They requested an extension for 1 year timeline for meeting site plan review, conditions of approval, and a 2-year timeline for beginning active and substantial work. That was approved. And then we had an application from Three Lakes Property LLC. Three Lakes asked for an extension for 30 days to February 20th. Their proposal has not been accepted yet. They have some work to do. But they're actively addressing the issues that are concerning their application. We had a hearing on the Tenny Mountain Overlay District. Whether or not it would be placed on the warrant for the voters. It was a 5-4 vote, and it failed. So it's not going to be on the warrant. And that was a pretty extensive hearing with substantial public input. Then we had the National Guard team of engineers came in to give us a presentation of their plan for their new facility on North Main Street. They're going to demolish the existing armory, and they're really not in our jurisdiction, but it was very, very nice of them to come and tell us what they plan to do. It looks like they have a really good plan. It's well thought out, and they don't really have a lot of room, so they are making the most of the room that they have. Then we had a citizen, David Nash, came in for an informational pre-app review. He has a garage He lives on number 30 Fairground Road, and he's exploring the idea of having a small, cottage-type business, maybe some retail, and we are hoping that he can put a plan together that we can, that we could approve or accept. In other business, we had a discussion about the HOP Round 2 grant. We have funding, which has been approved for $25,000, a grant, and for a housing master plan. And the board wants to go forward with that. And then lastly, there is a housing academy, which is program for Invest New Hampshire Housing Opportunity. And it's part of UNH Cooperative Extension. Members of the board can participate. They can either be in person or virtual. And they're going to discuss housing and community engagement topics. And there will be webinars on January 29th, and in-person training on February 12th, in-person on February 26th, and webinar on March 12th. And members of the board can register. I suppose, yeah, it says members of the board. It's an opportunity for board members who are involved in planning. And that's my report.
Any questions for Neil? Thank you.
Welcome.
Nothing for Campus Community Council. PES.
Nothing. Their next meeting is
Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah.
Tuesday. PRHS.
I believe they're, oh, no, I had that backwards. PES is on, okay, yes. PRHS is on Monday.
Next week?
Yeah.
Monday.
First Monday.
Yep.
Then the high school has their hearing on Tuesday
Yes.
for their SB.
And actually, so that meeting is Tuesday, and then the budget follows?
No, I think I had the two. PES is on Monday.
Okay, the elementary school's on Monday, and the high school's on Tuesday, and the high school
can't-
meeting has,
You're going to go on my stead.
on Tuesday?
No,
I'm actually not. I gotta get somebody else to go. I'm gonna be out of town for work.
Okay.
It's Tuesday for the high school?
Tuesday.
I have it Wednesday, so I guess I'm wrong.
Part of the problem
I
is
confirmed
timing
with
is in the middle of
Lisa.
my class, so.
Yeah, and I would be there, except that I'm in Miami.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, it's recorded, right?
It's recorded. Yeah, we could watch it after.
We can watch it after.
Yeah. I would encourage people to go to that particular deliberative session, especially if you're concerned about the tax rate. Anything else about the schools?
No.
Conservation Commission?
They met last week on Tuesday at 7. I've got the notes on my phone, so bear with me. One of the major portions of this meeting was the introduction of the folks from Fowl Inc. They're the folks that were kind of like a part of the Oxbow. And apparently, they wanted to kind of clear the air. That's, they don't see themselves as a competitor with the Conservation Commission. They really see themselves as more of a partner doing the same types of things. Largely, Fowl Inc. is made up of members of the Mayhew family up on Old Hebron, and they talked a lot about what their initiatives are, what their goals are. They're talking about responsible management of lands, specifically detailing some of their goals are to restore habitat, manage invasive species. So they want to collaborate with the Conservation Commission, which was well received. So they talk about some of the actions that they've already taken. They clean up, they do surveys and assessments, postings on some of the properties that they are managing. Obviously, part of their goal is to also allow responsible logging as part of the revenue generating portion of it. It's specifically also talking about allowing hunting at specified levels on any of those lands. So I forget what the exact numbers are. They were interested in purchasing land that is currently owned by the town of Plymouth, specifically up near the Fawver area. It's adjacent to their property. So they talked a lot about some of the methods and techniques using mowing, preserving habitats for like high pastures and what have you for some of the wildlife and native plants, and allowing for recreation. Some of their future plans were continued collaboration with the town and the Conservation Commission, and they emphasize that they take a much more hands-on approach there. Instead of just saying that we will monitor it, they actually go out there and physically monitor a lot of these things themselves. Let's see. There were updates on conservation easements, on projects. Grace Garvey provided updates on the Land Trust Committee's efforts with the various conservation projects. They discussed proposed changes to land use regulations and zoning along Tenny Mountain Highway and Smith Bridge Road. They also detailed the natural resource inventory funding that was already covered a little bit in the budget discussion. Kind of wrapping things up, there were some updates for the website that were discussed. Specifically, there's a new trail on Texas Hill Road that's not on the website that needs really be added. There was some discussion about the East Peak Summit Spur on Plymouth Mountain, which goes off, probably it's like about a 1/10 of a mile up from Pikes Peak, maybe a little further. It's kind of sort of unmarked, but not. It's on, it's in the AMC Southern New Hampshire Guide, but it's not at the kiosk down at the bottom. It's not on the website. There was some discussion about a landowner not wanting it published, but I think there's some confusion about whether it's that one or the one that went off the Hebron side. So they're going to look into that. They had Justin brought in some invasive species postcards that they want to be distributing once things grow, so that people can recognize them and hopefully deal with some of their invasive species. Something was proposed about the idea of banning plastic bags in Plymouth, and the potential benefits for the environment, and pretty much. Oh, one last thing is apparently someone's been plowing some of the lots for free.
Nice.
The ones for the recreation areas. Not that anybody was complaining, and they don't know who is doing it. So, and that's
Take it
pretty
as a
much
win.
the story.
What
Any
was the
questions
date
for
of that
Ted?
meeting? I'm sorry.
Last Tuesday, 7th, I think.
Thank you.
What happens if the plow does damage?
I don't know.
Okay.
Samaritan-laws.
You don't know who it is.
21st.
True.
Are they treated like class 6 roads if they're parking areas?
What's that?
Are they treated like, you're talking about parking areas at recreation areas?
Yeah, like the Tenny Mountain, not the Plymouth Mountain lot, the one across from at the upper side on Texas Hill Road where you can go also down to Rainbow Falls. These are at least the ones I think they're talking about. Somebody's just been plowing them.
Well, Neil used to plow those roads.
I'm not plowing. I subbed it out. I just sell sand from my sand pit. That's it.
And blueberries. What?
Blueberries, yeah, Christmas trees, apple cider, hard cider.
Do you have a license for that? Just kidding.
Any other questions for Ted? Capital,
Maple syrup. Yeah.
capital improvement, nothing for a bit. LRPC?
We canceled the December meeting, executive committee meeting, and there's going to be a March startup for both the commission and executive committee.
Okay.
What about Pemmy River?
We're getting there. We're getting there.
We'll get there. Parks and Rec?
No report.
Parking and economic development?
We have another presenter coming in on February 10th with regards to economic development, Neil Cantor.
Cool. Energy Commission?
So I don't think I made the last meeting. Phil, did you make the last meeting?
We didn't have one
Okay.
in January.
It must have been a last meeting, but no, I'm only kidding. No, yeah, I guess it was canceled.
Okay. Advisory Budget Committee on hold for a few months. PSU negotiations, same story.
When are those?
When do
wrapped
those
up
start?
for?
Yeah,
We'll start that in April,
April.
and we'll have a campus community meeting that same night.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Chamber has not met since the last time we talked.
Chamber had a coffee with the chamber at Tenny Mountain on Friday.
Oh, yeah?
That seemed pretty well attended.
I'm meeting with Maddie in 2 weeks to get sort of updated on all things Chamber. I was supposed to meet with her 2 weeks ago, and I had a day.
Plymouth Rotary also had breakfast at Tenny on Thursday. Went well.
Nice. Perlac.
There's a meeting tomorrow night. And also there's a meeting at the Common Man Inn. Trout Unlimited is going to provide an overview of the New Hampton fish hatchery.
Is that tomorrow night?
That's the day after Perlac. So it's the day
Two
after.
meetings?
No, it's Thursday night. So Tuesday night's Perlac, Trout Unlimited is Thursday. At the Common Man Inn. It's 7 o'clock, 7 to 8:30.
Tuesday, 6:30.
What was that?
6:30 on Tuesday?
6:30 on Tuesday, 7 to 8:30 on Thursday.
Police and fire building assessment?
Kevin is in the process of scheduling a meeting. I know he wanted to get the deputy position filled, and then he was going to start working on that.
Okay. And nothing on union negotiations, although those should start, what, summer?
For the,
July
for
or
the,
something like
for the
July?
fire department, it's gonna be, sometime right around there.
October.
Good.
So the PES budget public hearing is on the 3rd at 7 PM. And the high school's deliberative session is on the 4th at 6:30 by the looks.
I can go to that one then.
The deliberative session? Yeah, that your class should be well over by then. Anything else on committee reports? Public comments?
Sure.
Go ahead, Dan. Who's online?
Has anybody submitted their name for the 2 select board positions that are available next year, or this year?
As far as we know, there's one.
There's 3.
Oh, there's 3?
As of this afternoon.
Good.
Oh,
For the select board position?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
2 items. I know that the town is anticipating revenue from REX for the solar array. I think there's a bill in the legislature that deals with the renewable energy fund, which is which comes from revenues from the renewable portfolio standard. But in the past, there have been bills to change the configuration of the renewable portfolio standard, and that might, just be aware that if that happens, that may negatively affect the rec income that we're planning on for the that's the recs are generated in the market created by the renewable portfolio standard.
We did enter into an agreement today with Knollwood Energy at $37 per rec,
That's great.
which is a high amount,
How long is that contract for?
3 years.
Good. No, that's great. But if there's no rec market,
Right.
nobody's going to buy them anyway. The other item I wanted to bring to the attention of the board is that RSA 673.5 deals with terms of planning boards. And it says the term of office for an appointed land use board shall begin on a date established by the appointing authority, or as soon thereafter as the member is qualified, and shall end 3 years after the date is established. Terms for the planning board are currently in April. There is an allowance in this that says if no successor has been appointed or qualified at the end of a member's term, the member shall be entitled to remain in the office until a successor has been appointed or elected. So I would encourage this board to, considering that there's a petition amendment to make members of the planning board elected, I would encourage this board to hold off on appointment of planning board members until April.
But that election wouldn't take place until the following year.
You're right. But if the town votes to elect members and no one is appointed, any members can continue to serve until the next election cycle. So there's no need to appoint anyone early.
I just would like to run that by our town council.
Yep.
Just for
I
confirmation.
would encourage you to do that, but I would also encourage this board to consider waiting, given that there's an amendment in front of, or a warrant that's going to be in front of the town to discuss how planning board members are elected or appointed.
And we'll know before their term is expired.
We will.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I can follow up, I think Mike and Sue are both good contributors to the planning board. I don't have any issues with them continuing to serve, but them continuing to serve 1 year or 3 years is what's up, right? Thank you.
Who's them?
Sue and Mike.
Yeah.
Oh, Sue and, okay. I didn't realize who he was talking about.
Sue submitted her letter late this afternoon.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Anything else? Any other public comments? Anybody online? Tom, Dan?
Nope, all good.
Okay.
All right.
I'll make a motion to go into non-public in accordance to RSA 91-A:3, number 2, A, D, and E.
Have a nice evening.
Do-
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Second.
I second.
What? You second, go ahead.
Neil?
You good?
Ariane?
Aye.
Zach? Aye. Bill?
Aye.